So, as we have been reading through the scriptures chronologically, and we've been in Ezekiel, last week our sermon was about that phrase that we found 58 times in that book, that then they will know that I am the Lord. Okay, that was the phrase that just kept coming up over and over again. And we looked at reasons why. And so because of Ezekiel's life and his message to people, because of the punishment that was coming upon Jerusalem, because of the punishment that would come upon other nations, because of the exile, and then specifically at the end, it was because of the restoration that God is going to bring to his people, people will know that he is the Lord. And so if you have your Bibles today, you can turn to Ezekiel chapter 34. Okay, Ezekiel chapter 34 is where we'll start out. You can also follow along in the Bible app if you want to do that. All of our scriptures are going to be found there. But earlier this week, my family noticed that there was a certain thing being streamed online from Sight and Sound Theaters. If you've ever heard of it, there's one in Branson, there's one in Pennsylvania, and so they do these biblical plays. And they were streaming Daniel, which had been in the theaters the year before, and some of you guys had gone and saw that, but we had waited, and so now we decided we were going to watch that last week, and I'm going to tell you it was really, really good. Like, we were watching different things, I'm like, ooh, that's very biblical, or that's how they portrayed that. I loved watching that aspect. I loved the history that they brought into it. Like, as they were talking, they're like, here is this, and so things that we've been studying about the different deportations of the people of Judah into exile, like it wasn't just once. They were talking about that. When they're training their captives, it's not just the Hebrew slaves, but it's those from Assyria and those from Egypt, which again, we had talked about the battle and then Babylon just taking over all these places. And I'm like, man, I love the history that they are tying into all of these things. I loved watching the emotion of the different individuals who had been taken into exile and just wondering and then like looking back towards Jerusalem and worshiping God, and you just see all of the feelings that they had, that it's not just a story, like the things that they were going through. And so I loved watching that. And even while they were in exile, the different individuals were talking with one another, and they're like, do you remember the words that Jeremiah spoke to us? Or listen to the words that Ezekiel is speaking right now. And so all of it was being tied together. And I'm going to tell you, from this play, I appreciated the words of Ezekiel a lot more. I was going to tell you, like, sometimes there are aspects that, again, reading certain chapters, I'm like, God, what am I supposed to get out of this? Or what is this message? But like watching this and Ezekiel being represented by a person and speaking, like just the hope that he mentioned and watching people respond to that. Like, it created just this new desire for me. And there's one scene specifically that he is singing this song, and it's all about life, that God is going to bring life. And I know specifically it's referencing one instance in Ezekiel in the latter half of the book, but as I read this week, that word life just kept coming to mind. And I saw instance after instance after instance of Ezekiel speaking, this is what God is going to give you. And so in chapter 34 that I have you turn to, God had talked and said the kings of Jerusalem, the kings of Judah, they had not done a good job of being shepherds. Like he said, because they have not shepherded well, I will be their shepherd. That's what he says. And so I want to read verses 11 through 16 in chapter 34 just to listen to what God himself says. He says, for this is what the sovereign Lord says, I myself will search for my sheep and look after them. As a shepherd looks after his scattered flocks when he is with them, so will I look after my sheep. I will rescue them from all the places where they were scattered on a day of clouds and darkness. I will bring them out from the nations and gather them from the countries, and I will bring them into their own land. I will pasture them on the mountains of Israel, in the ravines and in all the settlements of the land. I will tend them in a good pasture, and the mountain heights of Israel will be their grazing land. There they will lie down in good grazing land, and there they will feed in a rich pasture on the mountains of Israel. I myself will tend my sheep and have them lie down, declares the Lord. I will search for the lost and bring back the strays. I will bind up the injured and strengthen the weak, but the sleek and the strong I will destroy. I will shepherd the flock with justice. Like in those few verses, here's God saying, I myself, like I am going to be their shepherd. But I don't know if you heard just all of the action as far as being the shepherd that he's going to do. That I will search for my sheep. I will look after them. Even though they're scattered, I will rescue them. I will bring them. I will pasture them. I will tend them. I will search. I will bind up the injured. I will strengthen. I will shepherd the flock. And for sheep, a shepherd brings life. For sheep, a shepherd is the one who protects them from outside dangers. A shepherd is the one who leads them to being able to give them the resources that they need. A shepherd brings life. But that's not the only time that I saw life in Ezekiel. In chapter 36, this whole chapter is about the restoration of Israel, even though they have been evil. Like, even though they don't deserve it, God is going to restore them. And so in chapter 36, I want to read verses 24 through 28, although you could read a lot more of this passage before and afterwards, but due to time, this is what I'm going to read to you today. But verses 24 through 28, I want you just to listen again to what God says. He says, "For I will take you out of the nations. I will gather you from all the countries and bring you back into your own land. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all impurities and from all your idols. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit in you and move you to follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws. Then you will live in the land I gave your ancestors. You will be my people, and I will be your God." Again, in those verses, you hear God saying, I will bring you, I will gather you, I will sprinkle you with clean water, this idea of this priestly purification. He says, I will cleanse you, I will give you a new heart, I will give you a new spirit, I will remove your dead heart, I will put my spirit in you, you will be my people, and I will be your God. And again, at the end of those verses, if we were to keep reading, you'd see how he talks about how the land is going to be fruitful. The one that he's bringing them back to, it will be fruitful. And you see that God restores with the land. God restores with a new heart. God restores with his spirit. Man, life. God is going to bring life. And then we get to the most well-known section probably from the book of Ezekiel, and the one that the play was referring to as Ezekiel is singing all about life that God is going to bring. And it's in chapter 37. And so I want to break it down kind of section by section. Let's read verses 1 through 3. It says, "The hand of the Lord was on me, and he brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord, and he set me in the middle of a valley. It was full of bones. He led me back and forth among them. And I saw a great many bones on the floor of the valley, bones that were very dry. He asked me, 'Son of man, can these bones live?' I said, 'Sovereign Lord, you alone know.'" All right, so you hear this word bones, and I don't know what you think of when you immediately hear the word bones. I don't know if you think of Halloween and you think of skeletons all around. I don't know if you think of a time that maybe you broke a bone in your life and just how maybe that was an inconvenience or even healing process. Maybe it didn't go the way that you wanted to. Maybe you think about Thanksgiving and it's the wishbone and you want to be the one, to win that. I don't know. I don't know if maybe it's like thinking about lunch and you're going to go to Buffalo Wild Wings and it's like the leftover chicken bone at the end, unless you order, boneless, and then you're out of luck, and that's not what you think about. But if you're trying to figure out where to go to eat, yep, you can tell Buffalo Wild Wings, thank you that I planted that thought in your mind today. But bones, I don't know what you think of, but here's Ezekiel, and in this place that he's at, everywhere he looks, he sees bones, as far as he can see. And he's walking among them, and it's not cartoonish. Sometimes we can kind of think of, when you're talking bones, we're going to draw out these nice little bones. But can you imagine being in this place with bones all around, everywhere that you look? And what an eerie feeling. There is absolutely no life all around you. And God asks Ezekiel, can these bones live? And Ezekiel says, well, only you know that one, God. And so let's keep reading verses 4 through 6. It says, "Then he said to me, 'Prophesy to these bones and say to them, dry bones, Hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says to these bones. I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life. I will attach tendons to you and make flesh come upon you and cover you with skin. I will put breath in you, and you will come to life. And then you will know that I am the Lord. So after, God asks Ezekiel this question, he gives him a task. He says, I want you to speak to these bones on my behalf. Tell them that I'm about to put them together. I'm going to put tendons on them. I'm going to put flesh upon them. I am going to breathe life into them. And then there was that phrase, and then they will know that I am the Lord. Then you will know that I am the Lord. Because of the awesome things that I am doing, you will know that I am God. Let's read verses 7 and 8. It says, so I prophesied as I was commanded. That's a good thing. It says, and as I was prophesying, there was a noise, a rattling sound, and the bones came together, bone to bone. I looked, and tendons and flesh appeared on them, and skin covered them, but there was no breath in them. So Ezekiel spoke what God had told him to, and he begins to hear a rattle. And I don't know what that would even be like looking, do they all start moving at the same time? Do you start seeing some of them and then they start flying together, putting themselves together? This almost seems cartoonish, but it's not. This is what he is seeing. And I don't know if he's feeling amazement. I don't know if he's feeling awe. I don't know if there's a little bit of fear. I mean, nothing like this has ever happened in his life kind of thing. But at the same time, God's the one who's in charge. So maybe there's no fear whatsoever. And God is bringing these things together. So the bones are coming together, and then tendons are being placed there. Then it says flesh is covering the bones. That word flesh can also be translated body. And then on top of that, you have the skin. And all of this is coming together, but, I do mean but, it is still lifeless. These bodies have no life. And so then we get to verses 9 and 10. Then he said to me, prophesy to the breath. Prophesy, son of man, and say to it, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Come, breath, from the four winds and breathe into these slain, that they may live. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and breath entered them. They came to life and stood up on their feet, a vast army. So finally, breath comes. That word breath is the same word that can be translated spirit, that sometimes we translate Holy Spirit. And as Ezekiel spoke, God sent the breath. And the bodies that were once only bone, from those that had been slain, they came to life. I want you to picture that. Not just hearing the words. Can you picture that? That you are in the middle of this valley, that everywhere you look, it is full of bones scattered all around. And now these bones, they have come together and they have become a numerous army. And they're not dead, but you see life. Life all around. And it's all because of God. Let's finish out this section in verses 11 through 14. It says, then he said to me, son of man, these bones are the people of Israel. They say, our bones are dried up and our hope is gone. We are cut off. Therefore prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. My people, I am going to open your graves and bring you up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel. Then you, my people, will know that I am the Lord when I open your graves and bring you up from them. I will put my spirit in you, and you will live, and I will settle you in your own land. And then you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken, and I have done it, declares the Lord. So at the end of all this, it's lesson time for Ezekiel. God's not just showing him a whole bunch of bones for fun. This is a field trip and we're looking everything out here. There's a purpose to all of this. All of these bones represent Israel who have been dried up. There's no hope. They've been cut off. Essentially, they're dead. That's what these people have been. But as the song goes that we sometimes sing, God turns graves into gardens and bones into armies. That's what God does. And God's people, they will have His Spirit in them and they will live. And then as we finish the book of Ezekiel over the next 2 days, you see how Israel and Judah are going to become one. Ezekiel's given this vision of this temple and God's presence with His people again. Like they see it. I'm going to tell you one of the lines from the play, the Daniel play that we watched last week that probably hit me more than anything. And I think it was Daniel who spoke it, but it might have been Ezekiel. And he's talking to some of the other guys there, and he simply says, the ultimate goal was not bringing Israel back to the land. Like, that was important. God wanted to do that. But the ultimate goal was not bringing Israel back to the land, but bringing them back to Him. That was the whole purpose of it all. In fact, it said, then they will know that I am the Lord. Yes, I want you to come back to this place that has been important, that will continue to be important, and you will know this, but because of everything that you see and my blessing upon you, you will know that I am God. And you'll be my people, and I will be your God. I'm going to tell you, though this vision that Ezekiel was given by God is specifically aimed at Israel. Like, this is who Israel is, what's going to happen to them. I want you to know that even today, God still gives new hearts. He still brings life to those who are dead. And I want to focus on 3 areas that we can experience this in. And the first is this, that God brings new life to nations. God brings new life to nations. Like, we look in this passage and we're looking at Israel, and they, as a nation, we're told there's going to be judgment that happens, but there's also going to be hope and restoration, and God delivers. He does what He says. And so the question is, can God still bring life to nations today? Absolutely. He absolutely can. In fact, if you were just to go to the internet and kind of type in the idea of God's revival happening in different nations, you would see different stories of what is going on. And things that just popped up for me was the idea of in the UK and in Brazil and in Congo and Nigeria and in China. And God is working in unique ways where prayers have been answered. And the gospel is being presented in ways where people understand it. Where there are revival moments happening, sometimes to changes in the government, but sometimes through the culture, and sometimes simply through the people. God is changing nations. I don't know if you kind of feel like looking around just at our nation sometimes and you're kind of like, oh. There's moments where you just kind of shake your head. And you turn on the news, you hear about broken homes and violence and poverty and human trafficking, and people being scattered and disorganized and fighting with one another, and people celebrating what is evil and condemning what is good, or certain people valuing reason over faith, or tolerance over truth, or even pleasure over purpose. And you just look and go, man, it doesn't feel like it's a very good place right now. I would say in some ways, yep, I agree. There's also a couple other things that I would point out. First off, that there have been some other nations that were in pretty bad situations, and God brought revival. God has brought revival amongst some places you might look at and go, how in the world is that ever going to change? The second thing I would tell you is that there's still a lot of good happening. And there's a lot of good happening, that people want to make a difference, that people are praying, that because of this evil, because of apathy, because of dysfunction, like there's a lot of people looking for truth. Going, this is not working. So God, if you're real, what is supposed to happen? What is this supposed to be like? And as we've talked about, many who are seeking, they are finding Him. God has the power to breathe life into nations. So individually, and may we pray for revival in the nation, for people to seek Him, because nothing is impossible with God. Nations. God can change the nations, but it's not the only entity that He works in. So God also brings new life to the church. God brings new life to the church. Because yes, Israel was a nation, just as we talked about, but they were also the people of God. And when you transition into the New Testament and begin looking at things like the church is the people of God today, those who truly follow him. And I say that because not everyone who sits in a church building really is following Jesus. Like we talk about how we want people to find and follow, not come and sit. And may we find and follow Jesus. May we surrender our lives to him, and may we live with him. That as we're walking alongside of him, we're choosing to love, we're choosing to obey because of what he has done and who he is. New life into churches. But how can a church be compared to dry bones? Well, there's a couple different ways. Perhaps one, they're following a whole bunch of rules without actually following Jesus. Sometimes churches can do that. We're following rules, but not Jesus, and in fact, that's what Jesus calls the Pharisees out for quite often. Not just following him, but following other rules instead of following God. And to be honest, their desire was probably in the right spot. Like they really did want to honor God with what they were doing, but in their desire to do so, they made up so many extra laws to follow that were never God's design for things. All with the purpose of we're not going to break his original laws. But because of that, they created such a burden. And people were so weary. And the question was being asked, why is it so hard to connect with him? Why is it so hard to connect with God? And Jesus basically looked at the Pharisees and said, you guys look great on the outside, but inside there is decay. Essentially, you are dry bones. And so sometimes a church, even today, can talk about do this and don't do this to the point where they miss Jesus. And in the desire to do what is right, there is no love and there is no grace. It is all legalism. And I have to check the boxes. And sometimes, without even knowing it, a church can be dead. Or sometimes we can swing to the other spectrum where a church can basically say, we want people to feel good about themselves. Like that's our entire goal. Like when we meet together and then have you walk out, we want you to feel good about yourself and so the truth doesn't get preached. Now, maybe that doesn't mean it's outright lies, although sometimes, unfortunately, it is. Like sometimes you'll hear things and go, that is not biblical whatsoever. But sometimes it's simply leaving out certain aspects of the gospel. The idea of sin or repentance or dying to ourself, or even sacrifice. You never hear any of those words. It's all easy, as Rick says, it's all unicorns and rainbows kind of thing. The words follow me have been replaced with all you have to do is believe. I get it. There are numerous blessings that God has for his kids. We've seen that in the Old Testament. If you follow me, here are things that will happen. But following also has a cost. It requires a buy-in. And there's a spot where I must realize who I am and my need for Jesus. Like even though there's some good in me, I need a new heart that only God can give to me. God, I need you to breathe in me. Churches, they can appear alive, like there is bones and tendons and flesh and even skin, but there's no life. There's no life. And so churches need to seek God truly, to call out to him, not just put on a great service. That's what we do. No, we're letting his Spirit bring us life as we walk with him. We're not trying just to operate out of our own strength and abilities, which there are a lot even within this room, but instead we're relying on the true power of God. Because a body without breath is not alive. So maybe we need to pray. God, if there's areas, even here at South Rock, that are dead, would you make us aware of that? And God, would you help us to be alive? Would you breathe into us? God, would you guide us? Would you allow grace and truth be that which is preached and that which is lived out? Help us to love. Help us to forgive. God, give us purpose in our community, not just meeting together for the sake of meeting. God, may there be real life change. And through all of it, may you be the one to receive the glory. Man, we can pray that, God, you are the one that gives us life. And we can also pray beyond South Rock. God, for the Big C Church, would your Spirit come in such a way that people see a difference in the body of believers, in the people of God, that it brings people to the kingdom. God can bring new life to the church. The last entity that I want to talk about is that God can bring new life to individuals. New hearts. A new life. That is something that individuals can have where people, maybe we've been living for ourselves. We're trying to figure things out. We're hearing lies from the world. We're feeling dejected or discouraged or disillusioned or defeated. Ultimately, we're feeling dead. There's no joy. There's no hope. There's no real reason to keep going. And this person needs life. And they need Jesus and what he can offer to them. Or sometimes we have people that we have made our decision to follow after Christ, and man, we are saved and we're excited about that, but we're not intentional as we keep following. And so what happens is we get stagnant. We get complacent. We're not going to God with our problems. We're not going to him to seek answers. We're not really spending any time with him whatsoever other than our service 1 hour a week. And somehow coldness creeps in. We find ourselves in a rut, and we're not experiencing life. And we become dry bones. That's what we become. And God wants to revive dead bones. He wants to breathe in us. The question is, can these bones live? Can I tell you in this room, those watching online, there is story after story after story of dry bones coming to life. And sometimes there's stories of some people that you'd look at in the room and go, there's no way that they're ever going to choose Jesus, but they do. Because God's Spirit is so much greater than sometimes what we give him credit for. Because life can be given to anyone who calls out to him. And nations and churches and individuals, God promises to replace hearts of stone with hearts of flesh. He can make dry bones alive again. He can make us new. He can give us life. Life. And for some of you, as you sit here, you hear these words from Ezekiel, and you remember what it was like to be dry. You remember that time, and now because of the change of God, like you are thankful that that's not where you're at right now, but maybe you're like, so what does this apply to me? Well, can I tell you that you ought to never stop seeking God and asking his Spirit to lead you? Because remember, our goal is to follow Jesus. It's not a destination. Heaven's great, but that's not our goal. Our goal is to walk with Jesus for eternity. And so God, help me to do that. And for those of you listening today that you want that new heart that we've talked about, you want his Spirit to live inside of you, man, you want him to change you. That can happen today, but it's not because of us. It's all because of Jesus, and he wants to breathe life into you. I've told this story before, but it's been a while. James Harnish tells the story of a woman in Tampa who received a great Christmas present. It came a week before Christmas. In August, she had been diagnosed with severe cardiomyopathy, a rare heart disorder which causes the muscles of the heart to become inflexible. And in fact, it's terminal. The only hope is a heart transplant. And over the next 5 months, she had become progressively weaker. More and more of her active life had been taken from her as she waited for the possibility of a new heart. And then one day at 2 a.m. on a cold morning, she was awakened and told that a new heart was on the way. By 4 a.m., she was in surgery. By 10 a.m. the next morning, she was out of surgery and in ICU. And a couple days later, her pastor was visiting her, and they talked about the gift of a new heart, and she simply said these words, "You know, this was the second time that someone had died for me." The second time that someone had died for her. This physical heart that she had been given was great. But the new heart that was because of Jesus was even greater. And that death was intentional. Jesus purposely chose to die so that she could be saved, so that I could be saved, so that you could be saved. And today, may you hear the truth that we are called to surrender our lives to Him. And maybe today is the day that you're ready to do that you're ready to go from dry bones to new life because the Spirit of God comes inside of you. And if you want to do this, man, as we are singing, I encourage you to head over to the prayer room. We would love to meet with you and pray and help you to experience what God's got for you. And if there's other things going on in your life that are just weighing you down and you want someone to pray for you, we want to do that as well. And we are going to draw close to the one who gives us life and a life that has meaning. Let's continue to do that.